Coming up next here, we're talking about the quarterbacks. Is there an actual quarterback battle? Today we have got our quarterback guru, CJ Chris James. Chris, he is a senior analyst at Football Game Plan. He's also with fantasy football analyst on Picks 11 in New York City, host of Chopping It Up with CJ, the CJ's podcast, and also he is Football Writers of America Association member. CJ, how are you doing, my man?
Doing all right, Big B. Good.
Right.
I'm glad to be on.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time. So, this Steelers quarterback battle, I guess my first question to you is, CJ, is this thing really a quarterback battle between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields?
I think that it's a succession plan. I think that the obvious choice to start week one to make sure that everyone's comfortable is Russell Wilson. I mean, what happened to him in Denver was his fault, but also he got a raw deal. There's a level of gravitas to him. I mean, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback who his numbers, if you just look at him from a 10,000 foot level, they're Hall of Fame worthy. So what happened the last couple of years may have left a bad taste in some's mouth, but I think he had more touchdown passes last year than the Steelers have had in the last 2 years combined. So I think he's good to go on that front.
Yeah, I've been saying that to a lot of people, CJ, is that, look, I know Russell Wilson might not be everybody's cup of tea, but he is absolutely better than what the Steelers have had the last 2 years. So let's make no mistake about that. Having said that, with this Arthur Smith offense, is Justin Fields actually a better fit for what the Steelers are trying to do on offense?
I think he's eventually a better fit. What they want to do is something that should be done for all quarterbacks. Some get it earlier than late. Hopefully he gets it here. They're going to instill confidence into him. They don't want to just put him out there because he's clearly the better athlete with more upside.
Right.
But he's got to get that confidence back. That guy had a swagger to him, 40 touchdowns, 1 interception at Ohio State in the season before the pandemic year. And once he actually develops into that, he can hit all areas of the field. Huge arm, and we know what he can do with his legs if that's called on.
Gotcha. My thing about Fields, and it's kind of what you said, look, is they didn't have a ton of weapons at Chicago for him to work with. I think the offensive line, don't get me wrong, their offensive line was bad, but I think it was a little bit better. They just didn't utilize it the way that I think that they're going to utilize it now. Plus, they have a lot more weapons. I think Fields can be good, but here's another thing, CJ, and this is just kind of a different question here. But as far as quarterbacks go, they don't let guys develop, sit and watch for a year. Do you think that was something that Justin Fields needed? And do you think that's a good thing for him to do now?
Sure. So if you need a guy to do exactly what you want him to do, AKA be kind of a robot, and some quarterbacks do work well in that situation, sitting for a year is ideal. I think for most players, playing is ideal. So you have to have a coaching staff that's willing to do what the strengths are of that young man, which did happen in Chicago, and then build off of that to what you want as your full complement. So I know that people want to see some of the old school stuff, but with the NFL going so simple in a lot of ways at the quarterback position, they can play immediately, but you just have to foster in what they do well instead of trying to have too much hubris and force your agenda on them.
Yeah, that's kind of my thinking as well. With Russell Wilson here in this Arthur Smith offense, they throw the ball over the middle a lot. That's one of the things that we've seen Russell Wilson maybe struggle or just not do altogether. Are those concerns real? And if they are real, can they be fixed?
Sure. So I think they're real in another schemed offense. If you have Russell Wilson sitting in the pocket and trying to throw across the middle, cancel Christmas. It's not happening.
Right.
But I think Arthur Smith, if he does the job that I know he's capable of doing, he'll get him on the move with intermediate throws. Russell Wilson can throw that pass, no problem. He threw it back at Wisconsin. He threw it in Seattle. It was the sitting in the pocket and having to be stationary and make those throws. He was way more comfortable throwing outside the numbers. This is a movement-based offense. They're going to get him in a space and spots that allow him to utilize his athleticism and make 3 levels of throws, and he can do that.
Right. Well, the one thing is a lot of play action. The Steelers, the imagination we could go all day talking about Matt Canada's offense, lack of imagination, but I feel like there's going to be a lot more of that. And again, play action, throwing the ball down the field, which is something that Russell Wilson absolutely does well. And in this offense, that's going to be something that's called upon. So I think that's an advantage. And again, whether you want to say over the middle, down the field, I don't think they're necessarily the same thing. But I think there's going to be a lot more that, turning around, putting the ball in a running back's hands, taking it out and getting the ball down the field, whether it's over the middle or not. I think Russell Wilson excels in that. And I think that's what this offense, CJ, is going to see a lot of this year.
Yeah. Russell Wilson's game reminds me of the 5 or 6 year ban of the analytics in the NBA, where it was all 3-pointers and layups.
Right.
Well, that's all Russell Wilson wanted to do, deep shots and short ones. Doesn't mean he can't. Just like those guys, it's not that they can't hit a 16-footer. So if you allow him to work that into his game with some natural ability to it, he'll be able to do it just fine.
Right. And that's kind of what I think a Russell Wilson offense is going to look like at this point. Is he's going to have those short, intermediate passes, but also, over the middle, but the deep shots as well. I think just what you said, all 3 levels of the field, I think Russell Wilson is going to take advantage of, because it's not that a lack of an arm is something that we have to worry about with Russell Wilson. That's not the case. It's more of, what does the offense call for? And I don't think it called for a lot of that stuff that we say that he struggled with or just didn't do as far as throwing the ball over the middle. I think he's going to do that. I think the Steelers have weapons that are going to be able to do that. You look at some of the tight ends. I'm not saying that Seattle and Denver didn't have good tight ends. I just believe the Steelers have better ones, Pat Freiermuth, and I think Darnell Washington is going to have a much bigger role in the offense than he did a year ago. And throwing the ball to him, whether it's in the red zone or not, I think Russell Wilson or Justin Fields is going to love doing that.
Absolutely. Plus, they had, I think he was taken in the 3rd round, tied for my number 6 wide receiver. I loved Roman Wilson coming out.
Oh, so yeah.
He's going to do a great job in that offense.
Yes, absolutely. So let's just say that Russell Wilson, because for all intents and purposes, he's going to be the starter. Unless something, a catastrophe happens, it's going to be Russell Wilson as the starter. At least that's all indications at this point.
Correct.
Does Justin Fields get a package to get on the field? And if so, what's it look like?
I think they do. And first and foremost, I think what they're going to do is try to fool you. What do I mean? They're going to use it kind of like the Derrick Henry package. And I hate saying it like this because sometimes it gets conflated with athletic quarterbacks being running backs.
Right.
It's the lining him up in what kind of looks like a single wing, except surprise, surprise, dude can throw the ball. He's a quarterback. Right. That's going to be the initial, but they'll also start to mix him in as the season goes along, not to steal the job this year. I think for the full season, this is Russell Wilson's job, unless he plays poorly, but it'll be, you never know what's going to happen. I think 55 or 60 different quarterbacks started games last year.
Right.
So the most in modern NFL history. So they want to make sure that everyone's good to go and on the same page, especially for that late push, because that end schedule, that tail schedule is terrible.
Yeah. And that's the thing, I've had a lot of questions and people asking me, well, why don't they just run a 2-quarterback system? I'm like, hold on a second. That doesn't work. You don't need a 2-quarterback system. Nobody ever gets into a rhythm. And if somebody happens to get into a rhythm, all of a sudden you're going to take them out just for the purpose of taking them out of a football game to get somebody else reps. Yeah, that's not going to work. Not at this level. You might be able to get away with that at college. You can't get away with that in the National Football League. So a 2-quarterback system, I don't think that works. I think short yardage, goal line package, something of that nature. I like Fields getting on the field then, but even in that case, I still, you can't just take Russell Wilson off every time it gets to be 3rd and 1 or it's 4th and 1 or on the goal line. You can't just say we're going to take Russell Wilson out of the game. You can't do that. So to me, I think that getting Justin Fields on the field and getting him snaps are going to be few and far between, especially if Russell Wilson is playing well, CJ. I think it's going to be tough.
No, it will be. I feel like it's going to be more utilized in the vein of what the Saints were doing when they would bring Taysom Hill in to replace Drew Brees. At no point did anyone with any sense think Taysom Hill's going to take over for Drew Brees. But what it was is some of that was due to his physical limitations, but it'll be more of a mix and match just to keep people on their toes. And to your point earlier, the reason it works in college is twofold. Sometimes skill sets differ, but in college, and you can speak more to this, you know how difficult it is to get communication from two different people, two
Oh,
different styles, two different cadences, and also getting the play in college, signs and all sorts of stuff everyone knows. This is the NFL. It is different. It
right.
cannot work very well, folks.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. Here's $1 million question and last question before I get you out of here is if Russell Wilson wins the job and he plays well, what who's the quarterback next year and what does that all look like?
The $1 million question is answered in the following way. I feel like for 2025's season, right? The only way that Russell Wilson is the quarterback is if the Steelers make a true push. They have to win a playoff game. They have to look like a unit where he's the future because what they have in the garage is a Ferrari that they need to learn how to drive first because they haven't been able to drive at that position for a little bit. But if he just plays good football, I think what they'll do is figure out how to transition him to someplace and get Justin Fields on the field. We saw the difference between, and this is not a knock, it is a bad comp. Alex Smith versus Mahomes, they knew what they had in the garage. And Smith did his job, but they knew that they had a more talented guy back there. Yeah. And it's the same situation here.
Absolutely. And I like that analogy. I know people are going to take it and misconstrue it and say, oh, he's comparing Patrick Mahomes to Justin Fields. No, he didn't. He's just comparing the situation. That's it. And so I totally understand. I like that comparison, actually. Having said all of that, I think you're right. I like the fact that Russell Wilson has to win a playoff game. I've been saying that, and there's some people that are pushing back, but most Steeler fans agree with me and agree with what you said, CJ, is like, look, if you don't win a playoff game, even if we win the division, but we don't win a playoff game, how much have we gained in all of this? How are we different than what we have been previously? We're not any different. So why would we move forward with this aging quarterback if we aren't better than what we have been as a team? Now, granted, there can be circumstances that happen. Context clearly matters. But at the same time, CJ, it's still, truth is truth, is that you cannot say that the Steelers are in a better situation if they still can't win a playoff game. You can't go with that guy moving forward when we can't get past where we're currently at right now. Heck, Kenny Pickett, fine. Okay, we didn't win. Mason Rudolph, fine. Heck, there was a time where Duck Hodges almost got us to the playoffs, and we weren't going to win a playoff game then anyway. So if we're not better, I don't think you can move forward with an aging quarterback. I think you got to give somebody else an opportunity.
Yeah. Caveat would be if they play the Chiefs for some reason in the first round and lose 35-31 and Russell Wilson balled out, but TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, Joey Porter Jr., all of them went down.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Context clearly matters. Clearly matters. Because if Russell Wilson throws for 400 yards and they're playing great, but the defense has a problem, well, that's not his fault. I totally understand that. So, but yes, you're exactly right, man. Well, number one, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us. I know we'll have you back more and more, especially as the season gets done. We'll have you back later on to break down some of these quarterbacks within the conference, man. So thank you, CJ, for taking the time out today.
Thanks for having me on again, Big B, and always welcome on.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, thanks, CJ, again for taking the time to come on and just kind of break down a little bit of what's going on with the quarterback situation there. I thought it was important that you guys got a different voice. And CJ's been doing this for a long time, so I appreciate him joining us. Do have a question here. So a nice poll question. Although Mike Tomlin has squashed any QB battle talks, do you want there to be an actual QB battle and let the best quarterback win? That's the question. We know that they've said that it's not there. It's a competition and they're not talking about it. Do we want it to be one? That's a good question. Please leave your answers in the comments, people, because like I said, I've been the person from day one that thought it should be a battle. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a battle, but I want it to actually be one. I want there to be a battle, but make sure you guys leave your answers in the comments section there.